as silly as it sounds, if I had to go back and look at one moment that made me think this is something special, it wasn't one of the big grand moments where, Arthas stormed into Lordaeron and killed his father or anything like that. It was actually just the first time that I walked down the road in Elwyn in the game. And I remember looking around, I walked into Goldshire and just thought, this is so beautiful and it feels so real and so fantastic. And I think it's a lot of the little understated moments and the coolness of the world that are really what sort of stick with me in terms of what makes Warcraft special. Probably my favorite moment in any Warcraft game, I'm gonna be selfish and pick World of Warcraft. It's some of the early moments in the raiding game when some of the early raiding guilds first were killing dragons like Onyxia and Nefarian, and they would all travel to either Stormwind or Orgrimmar to mount the dragon's head on the stick. And what I would do is I'd go and watch them in GM mode. We were watching a lot of these raiding guilds and following their progress and making sure everything was working okay and fun. And I remember going and watching entire servers form around these guilds and the excitement that everybody would have about, this big epic moment that happened that was very focused on one guild, yet somehow it was shared by everybody in the community. And I think we spent a lot of time creating a lot of big epic Warcraft moments for people. Obviously there was a scene at the Wrath Gate that's really memorable, but really it was the moments that the players created that stand out for me more than anything, any moment that we could have created in the Warcraft universe.
I believe it was at one of the first or second BlizzCons, and it was early in the morning. Well, game player early, it was 9:30 or 10. And I was riding up the escalators going to an interview with some magazine, probably Muscle Fitness or something like that. They like to keep tabs on me. And I'm riding up the escalator, I look down and I just see thousands and thousands of people all just sitting there waiting to get in to the con. And I was like, oh my God, all these people are here from across the world, different realms, all here to celebrate Blizzard games. And so I just got so swelled with company pride, I yelled, "For the Horde!" And everyone looks up, and thousands of people yell, "For the Horde!" And then there was a few hundred boo Alliance people. And then so the Horde started going, "For the Horde!" And the Alliance started going, "For Numragon!" And they just started yelling back and forth until the doors opened. And that's when I knew we were doing something right. And that was a great moment in Blizzard history for me. Well, specifically in World of Warcraft, I was playing in Alterac Valley. We were at the Alliance base, and right at the bridge, there's two bunkers and the bridge. Well, we're storming across the bridge, and somehow some little gnome mage worked his way around the gorge and dropped off on some little ledge. And so we're trying to run across the bridge, and he's blasting the heck out of everybody. It's like, all right. So I turn my mount, and I charge off the bridge. And as I'm falling, I hit charge and start hurtling upwards through the air at the gnome. Hack, chop, slash, execute. And that was the end of that little guy. But that was a pretty epic moment of jumping off a bridge on my Brewfest Ram and beating the hell out of a little gnome mage. Dress wearers.
For me, the moment I realized that the Warcraft universe was something special was probably in early World of Warcraft Alpha, first time actually, when I logged my character in, and I rolled a warrior. It was an orc. It was during the orc Alpha, and I realized that I had more than one button to press. That was a huge revelation for me. It was just like this incredible really? Like, games can actually do this? Learning further down the line that I got even more abilities, it was just like, holy moly, how are they doing this? You know, how can we possibly be giving these abilities out? And so that was kind of a special moment. But I think my favorite moment's definitely in WoW. Probably a tie between seeing the Wrathgate actually come to life and happen in game the first time, and I guess they say, you know, the first time is always the best time. But for me, the In Dreams quest in Eastern Plaguelands, it's the end of the chain that Tyrion Fordring gives. It's the first time you meet Tyrion Fordring, who's now a huge character in our universe. And it's when you escort his son, Talon, out of Hearthglen. And it's that moment when Talon's coming down, and he's kicking butt down Hearthglen. He's killing everyone in his way to get to his father. And he's interrupted as he's just leaving Hearthglen. And a battle happens, and Talon's killed. And Tyrion rides down just as he's killed. And then the grieving father, you know, gets down on one knee and plays and says a line very reminiscent of The Godfather. You know, look what they did to my boy, and then just proceeds to stomp the ground of all the bad guys, all the Crusaders. That was a powerful moment for me. It was like I said, one of my firsts, and one of the first times I think where we really kind of took storytelling in our game to that next level. It worked really well. So.
I'd have to say the first time I ever played Warcraft 1 multiplayer. So multiplayer games were pretty unknown at that time. They were pretty new thing for people to play and experience, and being able to actually play against your friend using a null modem cable and educating yourself on how that technology worked and figuring out how to connect two computers together. That was an awesome experience. My favorite experience in any Warcraft game is actually in World of Warcraft. It's probably the first time that the guild I was involved ever killed Ragnaros. Ragnaros was a very big boss at the time. Our 40-person guild was not very good, but you know, we slowly geared up, slowly got enough people to a point where we were able to actually make real attempts. And I think we spent about a month kind of in the neighborhood of beating on Ragnaros and making progress. But killing Ragnaros was just a really awesome experience. First time it happened. It's, you know, throw your hands up in the air and scream at the top of your lungs. Awesome experience.
Well, I think I'm primarily a solo gamer, so the moment that World of Warcraft made me a social gamer, I was very impressed, because my whole family plays it, and we actually have a guild, and we hang out together, and it's a really amazing experience. Well, there was one family member in particular that I just don't see as often anymore, and I really miss that. And in the first year of WoW, we got together online and we played through the Lunar Festival experience, the whole world event together. And there was just that moment when we had shot off all these fireworks, and it was like 3 a.m, real time. And we found that we had been hanging out for quite a long time and had been talking and chatting and sharing this experience. And it felt like more than a game. It felt like we had gone off on a family retreat or something together.
The moment I realized that Warcraft was kind of becoming something special, I think, was during Warcraft 3. And we had been playing with the theme of the orcs' corruption. You know, the demon Manaroth had put the orcs under a blood curse. And all the while, you know, the character of Thrall was trying to convince his people that we can be better than this, we can raise above this. And the corruption was kind of most seen in the character of Grom Hellscream, you know, who kind of railed against the corruption and knew that he wanted to find a better way and get rid of his rage. But he just kept failing and failing. And finally, at the end of the campaign, we did a cinematic directed by Nick Carpenter where Grom finally raised up and directed all that rage and anger and all the corruption that was in him at the source of the corruption, which was the demon Manaroth. And he scored a crit, and he took Manaroth down. And as he laid there dying, you know, he would say to Thrall, you know, his brother, like, you know, I've done it. I finally freed myself. And Thrall says, no, you've freed us all. And it was probably one of the most poignant moments we had attempted to create in the series. So I was very proud of the scene's kind of fidelity, that it wasn't a bombastic combat scene, but it just had a lot of heart. And it just really stirred, my tanks, as it were. I was very proud of the moment. But upon reflection, I really enjoyed the idea that, you're watching this scene that, is pretty engaging, for a video game, and it's two orcs, the classic fantasy bad guys. And suddenly they're as dimensional as any other characters you've met, certainly within our franchise. And I was very proud of that, that we had turned that archetype on its head, and suddenly you're caring and invested in what would otherwise have just been two-dimensional bad guy characters. So I've always been very proud of that, and through the lens of that scene specifically. My favorite personal moment, in terms of just playing the games, has to be a quest line we constructed in Northrend, and unrelated to the main story. It involved an Argent Crusader who had been contracted the plague, the scourge, and he was dying, and the heroes wanted to see if they could save this man who was so noble and had served with such distinction. And the quest line was actually originally based on one of our buddies here, Rob Breidenbecker, had his brother pass away, his brother Bradley, from cancer. And we wanted to do something for Rob and just kind of honor his brother and, just kind of rally around the family a little bit. So Alex Afrasiabi and I kind of came up with this storyline that would have players go and interact with the great world powers, the Red Dragonfly, the Druids and the angelic Naru of Outland. And one by one, as the player went to these people and asked for help to save this noble soul, it's kind of clear that in this case, death will be inevitable. But the nobility that Bride and Brad, exhibited kind of really spoke to us, and even in the face of all this darkness and the scourge and all within this fiction, that, the nobility of the human spirit is very, very powerful. And I loved that quest line felt so emotional, and especially the point where Bride and Brad, he's going out, there is no saving this man. And the way that Alex handled the end of this sequence where the Naru come down and essentially beam him up and, whisk him away to some unseen paradise just was very satisfying to me from a story angle and from a personal angle. I talked to Rob Breidenbecker about it after the fact, and he was really touched, and he even showed his dad and his family, and maybe it even helped a little bit in their grief. There's this goofy video game thing, but it just was such a great moment for me, fictionally, and more importantly, personally, that sometimes this clumsy craft of making video games and things can sing beyond the game itself, beyond the gameplay itself, and, really touch people. And I get a huge kick out of that.
So it actually had to do with when I was in QA, and we were testing out the Warcraft 2 map editor. And for me, it was pretty personal, just because, I'm a coder, I self-taught myself, and I realized, wow, this is hugely different than any other game on the market, because here you have the ability to really extend the universe in whatever fashion you want to extend it. And so I'm sitting down and I'm playing around with this thing, and I'm just doing everything I can possibly do to kind of, break the system, but at the same time, explore some of the creativity. And as a coder, a lot of times you don't get to put on the designer hat too often. But then I started playing with it a little bit, and I said, there's certain things here that I'd like to change, and some of the bells and whistles aren't working as well as I would hope that they would work. And so when I went home in the evening time, I decided, I'm actually gonna start coding myself. And so I recreated the map editor. And even though I was in QA, that effort of recreating the map editor was ultimately what allowed me to move over to become a coder at Blizzard. So it was personal for me, but it was also one of these things where you look at it and you say, wow, here's this tool that we're making as a company, and we're basically saying, hey, put on your designer hat, be whoever you want to be, and create these awesome maps. And we've kind of held on to that over the years, and we've provided not just the tools, but really that embracing of the community throughout all of our franchises. I was thinking a little bit about the personal moments, and the storyline in the Warcraft universe has always been something that's been really captivating. Whether it's the Illidan quest lines, like Warcraft 3 for me was just awesome. And my brother was a really big Warcraft fan, and he when he was 31, he was diagnosed with cancer, and he basically, he'd sit at home and he'd be doing his thing, but then he'd play WoW when it first came out, and he'd always be bugging me. I was always a little too busy at work and this, that, and the other, but he would play WoW, and he's like, hey, have you checked out this? Have you checked that? And he would just geek up on everything WoW related. And he had a couple of kids, and he enjoyed like sitting down and playing with them as well. And when he died, I guess it was about 2 years ago. I remember I was sitting out by my pool, and I banged off a quick email to the guys on Team 2 and just basically said, hey, the storyline in the Warcraft universe has always been awesome. Like, is there any way that we can maybe do something for my brother? And it was kind of crazy. Like Metzen got wind of it, and he had gone to my brother's funeral with me, which I thought was awesome. And he wrote back and he said, well, we can kind of approach this a couple of different ways. We can either make him actually like a part of the main storyline for Lich King, or we could do like a really just epic quest. And he found this way, and I forget who did the writing behind it. I know that Metzen really gave a lot of direction, because I remember the email where he basically described the quest line and really his vision for the quest line. And it was wild, because he was able to take my brother's struggle for about 4 or 5 years and represent it in this fantasy universe. And just reading it, just going through and actually like reading what Metzen had paraphrased of what had gone on, it was pretty amazing. And then I sat down and I shared it with my dad. And my dad, he didn't know how to react, right? I mean, he was obviously moved by it, but he's not Mr. Emotional Dude. So the first time that I saw the storyline in game, my hat goes off to the creative department here, the writing abilities in Warcraft, the guys on Team 2, and what's wild is I had the crew here put together the DVD montage of that storyline, and I gave that to my parents. And my mom, she kind of refuses to watch it just because it's too much for her, I think. And my dad, I guess he snuck out with a little portable DVD player, and he had to watch it in private in a car. And I ended up taking a copy of it as well, and buried that along with some of his personal belongings up in the Arctic Circle. So I would say that, without question, one of the most personal moments for me is that Bride and Red quest line. Every once in a while, I like Google the quest line, and there's dudes that are like, they're actually like checking out the lore, behind like all the various quest lines that are out there. And I Google Bride and Brad, and it's actually kind of cool, because like there are these guys who are just like, oh my God, like this quest line is awesome, and they don't get it, but then like some other people, like I guess the guys on the RP servers, like they fully geek out on it. They're like, yeah, hey, let's like I was rooting through the manual, and there's a line in the manual that's talking about how basically like I did a dedication in the manual for Brad, and then they Google his name and they found out that he had died, and he basically like they put like 2 and 2 together, and they're like, oh my God, like they go through and they review like the kind of cancer that he had, and it's just kind of crazy because it was sort of like a way to immortalize him, like I don't know. I mean, it was good stuff, and I mean, I guess, I don't know, on the lighter side of things, like that's just cool, like I've gotten some of his friends that have emailed me that also play WoW, and they're just like, dude, that was epic. That was the thing that you needed to do for Brad. So.
Well, it kind of has a two-parter here. So back in 94, early 95, after we shipped Warcraft 1, we went to the Consumer Electronics Show. This is before the big E3s and whatnot. And we had a 10 by 10 booth showing Warcraft 1. And we had a little, like a 37-inch monitor that was showing the cinematic. And it was... initially, we're like really scared. We're thinking, are people going to like this or not? And, a couple people showed up. It turned into 5 people, turned to 10, and then there was a small crowd out there. At that moment, we were like kind of beside ourselves because this is a consumer electronics show. There's a lot of other game companies here, small game studios, and we had this nice crowd looking at our cinematic. Comparing that to our first Blizzcon, and to think that we had a small crowd out in front of our 10 by 10 booth, and then next we're at the Anaheim Convention Center, and we have 10,000 people of our our best and brightest fans out there. That's probably the moment that really stood out to me as the most, because it was comparing that first moment when we first went to that CES to where we came 10 years later, which was probably my biggest moment. So it's actually more recent, I should say, World of Warcraft, the original. It was with a group of guys at work, and we raided Onyxia for the first time. And just the experience of, we worked on the dragon, we worked on the zone, we knew everything about it, but the actual experience of being in there as a player with all the guys on the team, it was just awesome. I mean, it was the most exhilarating experience I've had in any of our games, to kind of look at it not only from the developer side, but now we're on the gamer side, we're on the player side, and we got to be one of them. And we actually, obviously we didn't take her down on the first or second or even third attempt, but when we finally did, there was like cheers throughout the office. We were all so excited. And the thing is that the players had actually already done it before we had, but for us it was the first achievement internally for us to do that. So that was probably my biggest.
So I feel very fortunate because I've been part of the Warcraft franchise since its inception, when we originally started working on Orcs and Humans way back in early 94 or maybe even late 1993. But one of the experiences that I remember from that development process was an internal tournament that we hosted long before anyone had any concept of esport, and long before people were playing games competitively on the internet. We hosted an internal tournament before the game was even released, one-on-one single elimination tournament, and it was really fun. And Alan Adham and I both made it to the final match, and elected not to play that final match, which I know in today's esports state is sacrilege, and you have to have a champion. But I just remember the head-to-head experience being really compelling, more immersive and more exciting than the experience you would get playing against just a computer AI. And it looking back, it's like, and knowing what we do with esport today, it's just a moment in time that really stands out for me. I would have to say that my favorite experience as a gamer from the Warcraft games would definitely be an experience I had with World of Warcraft. I'm a member of a guild. World of Warcraft is the first MMO that I ever played. It's a very social experience, exceptionally more so than any games I had played previously. And our guild worked up the courage to try to raid Molten Core. We had been raiding in a 20-man raid, but we weren't having much success. And so we gathered up 40 people and actually got a coworker that was in another guild that was more successful than we were to lead us through Molten Core. And so there's two experiences that I remember. The first time that we actually went through Molten Core with this guy from another guild leading the way. And after that first run, he handed that experience off to us, and we had to run our own Molten Core raid after that. And we spent a lot of time raiding Molten Core, and this was long after all the high-end guilds had mastered this content. And so for a lot of people, this was a trivial experience, but for us, it was new, and for me, it was really new because my first MMO and my first raiding experience. So I remember distinctly the first run where this guy held our hand through the experience. We didn't get very far and then handed it off to us. And then what was really, really gratifying, really satisfying was after many, many weeks of running Molten Core, we finally summoned Ragnaros and proceeded to get our asses handed to us in very short order, and we called it an evening. But then several weeks later, after a lot of effort and after a lot of people geared up with fire resistance gear, we were actually able to successfully defeat Ragnaros, and it was really satisfying experience in terms of accomplishment, in terms of the teamwork that we had to employ to achieve that goal. After we did it, we all posed for an in-game photo or screenshot, and I still have a screenshot on my desktop that one of my guildmates took of my character from that experience, and that was, at this point, that was several years ago. And we've all leveled up to 80 now, and at the time we were only level 60, but it really emphasized for me the importance of the social element and the importance of the teamwork of the experience in World of Warcraft. Really cool experience.
The moment that I realized Warcraft was something special, I think there were many moments because there were several different points at which there were moments that just exceeded all of the other moments that came before. And so I think one moment that just completely sticks out for me is the midnight launch of World of Warcraft, because here we were, launching this massively multiplayer game. It's our first subscription game, and the beta was pretty successful, but you really just have no idea when you launch a game, any game, how many people are going to show up and want to buy it and play it. You just don't know how well it's going to do. And leading up to World of Warcraft, there was a lot of buzz and excitement, and so we drove out to the local Fry's Electronics, and driving up, I still remember the feeling. I got there, and there's traffic to get to Fry's, to get off the freeway. It's completely backed up, and there's crowds and crowds of people walking towards Fry's, and there was no parking within blocks. And I was thinking, gosh, did somebody else schedule an event the same time as us? But how likely is that? It's 10:30 p.m., nothing's really open. Could all these people be here for the World of Warcraft midnight opening? And I get there, and the line wrapped around Fry's twice, wrapped around the entire parking lot of Fry's. And if you know it, the Anaheim Fry's or the Fountain Valley Fry's, it's a huge parking lot. It wrapped all the way around that and then continued on down the street. And this is still with an hour and a half to go before we opened. And that just, the feeling of driving up and walking, seeing all of these people excited to buy our game before it had even come out yet, was pretty special. In terms of moments that I think about when I think about Warcraft, some of my favorite moments. Actually, I'm going to go back to Warcraft 1, Warcraft Orcs and Humans, because the defeat screen, when you were playing as Orc, on the Orc side, that you were presented with was Bill Roper basically doing his voice for the Orc, just berating you for losing. And he said, "You pitiful worm, your defeat could mean our loss in the war against humans." I loved it.
It's a hard one to kind of narrow down because there's a number of things that I observed that really made me feel that way. I think my first memory of it being really special was when I worked at Davidson & Associates, Blizzard's original parent company. And Bob Davidson, who viewed Blizzard as kind of his crown jewel of sorts, was nearly running up and down the halls when Warcraft Orcs and Humans released, and he was telling everybody that we had sold a couple 100,000 units, and it was beyond what any of the educational software was selling at within the other part of the company. And so he was going on and on about how brilliant the Blizzard guys were and how incredible this product was, and I hadn't seen the management of Blizzard's then parent company ever have that kind of reaction to any of the other products that had ever come out. And so in the company, that was the first indication. I think outside of the company, probably that I started getting calls for the first time ever from friends of mine talking about this Warcraft game. And is that part of your guys' company? Or, and I think, when you start having people that call you about the products you're working on out of the blue that you haven't heard from in a long time, that's where you start thinking to yourself, wow, this might have some heat behind it. And then I think the midnight opening for War 3 also really resonated, and then the subsequent World of Warcraft midnight openings, being able to see those things happening around the world. I think each time we do that, it just further cements how big and how meaningful this franchise has become to so many people around the world. My favorite personal experience, I don't know if I would position it that way, but rather kind of my favorite point in the Warcraft universe or the Warcraft lore and history. It's an interesting one. I don't know if anybody else will talk about this, but my favorite is the Thrall Origins story, basically where, as a baby, when his parents were killed, Duratan and his mother were killed, that Blackmore brought him into human care and basically raised him in kind of the human environment and trained him to be as savage as an orc could be, but also be as cunning and smart as a human. And the whole thing of him coming out of that and finding escape through a human girl, and then ultimately, reuniting the clans, that to me was one of my favorite stories within there. And I know that when we were originally doing Warcraft Lord of the Clans, we ultimately didn't do it, but that was one of my favorite stories, and one that I hope we highlight more in the future. And certainly, there's a lot of other points that are special. Certainly playing the game with my friends and what have you, and meeting people online. But I think for me, I kind of wanted to focus on a point in the history or lore of the game that really was special, and I love that.
I think the moment that really made Warcraft special to me was when we went to announce the product of Warcraft 3, and we were over in London at the time, and we were in a packed room of reporters that wanted to see what we were doing next. And not only were they blown away by what we were showing, but they were really amazed at the depth of the universe and that we were going to be able to tell a story. And there were so many people in the room that we actually had to repeat the conference to be able to show it twice. So my favorite moment as a player predates me even working at Blizzard. I was actually starting in the games industry at Interplay Productions, and Warcraft 2 came out, and we were playing the game pretty much all the time. And I was one of the best players of the company, and my boss, Brian Fargo, one of the founders of the company, he bet on me against the top player in the 3D department. And we ended up playing this best of 3 series in front of the company, and with my boss steering over my shoulder the entire time. And luckily, through some grunt rush magic, I was able to win the best 2 out of 3 games.
So there are a lot of moments in World of Warcraft and Warcraft lore from previous Warcraft games that I would consider to be really special moments. All the way back to when I first played Warcraft 1 a long time ago and saw in Orcs vs. Humans the water elementals and the demons being summoned in that game, and thought that it was just really cool and kind of captivated my imagination. But more than anything else, as far as an epic storytelling experience goes, I would have to say that when Arthas Menethil committed patricide in the Warcraft 3 games, where he kind of fell into the grip and took over his role as the Lich King, it was probably the most epic experience for me. It really made me realize that you could tell an amazing story and really kind of create something more than just a game with the Warcraft universe. Well, one of my probably favorite experiences within a Warcraft game is, interestingly enough, during the early alpha stages of World of Warcraft, where I really first got to see the amazing transitions that were being done in World of Warcraft, crossing the boundary between Elwyn Forest and Westfall and seeing how the landscape changed and the world changed and the color palettes changed and the whole feel and vibe of the world changes as you cross from one area to another. Really stood out for me as a special moment in both experiencing it as a player and also experiencing it as a developer, really seeing that Azeroth as a world was going to come to life by having these amazing transitions between zones.
I don't actually think that it was a moment. I think it was many moments throughout the years. I think that one of the first ones for me was when Bob Davidson made the ruling long ago with Warcraft 1 that we wouldn't just put out 50,000 copies, we put out 70,000 copies, and everybody was like, we were kind of afraid that it wasn't going to go anywhere, and it actually did very, very well, and we sold out, so that was a really good one. The thing for me with all of our games is I'm because of the early years of I just meticulously went through everything. I love it when like one of our RTS games like Warcraft or StarCraft or all those are over and everybody leaves the game, and then I go back in to whatever level we're playing and I just strip everything. I take all the trees, I take all of the Vespian gas, I just take absolutely everything out.
I'd say the moment I realized the Warcraft universe was something very special was when we worked with Coke in China for the first commercial, and we went to Shanghai and we went and toured all the game rooms and everybody was playing World of Warcraft, and we're out on the street and there were billboards for World of Warcraft, and there were big plastered artworks of World of Warcraft on the sides of buses, and we were going, wow, this is amazing. We go halfway around the world and here are all these people enjoying something we created, and it was just mind-boggling. I'd say the moment that stands out in my mind is from Warcraft 3. Arthas coming home and claiming the throne from Tyrannus. That to me was just, what a moment. What a moment. Amazing.
Well, this is kind of the opposite of that in a way, but it's a fun story. So I was having lunch with Matt Samia and Chris Metzen, and this was back in the day when WoW was still really just kind of a rough idea. It wasn't even very far along in the development process. And so I knew a little about the type of game that they were going for. And I said to them, guys, this whole WoW idea, I don't know that it's got much potential. I don't think it's going to make it. So Now, looking back in retrospect, I was definitely wrong about that. But it's kind of a fun story. Now that WoW is further along in development, I can see that, I got it all wrong.
The moment that I realized that Warcraft World was special when I, it was probably first year working at Blizzard Entertainment. Alan Adham was the president at the time, and he asked me to play this game that they had been working on. And to me, it looked like a chess game. I'd never played PC games. I was always into things like Super Nintendo and those types of games. And I sat down, played it, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. This is going to be weird. When I finished playing the first game, I remember looking up and going, where's Alan? I gotta grab him, where is he? And thinking to myself that it was the funnest game I had ever played on PC / any console. And thinking to myself like, whoa, this could be something big, you know? And then seeing the reaction that it had, you know, I think it was a sleeper. It took about 6 to 7 months for people to even realize that there was something out there that was actually fun to play. And thinking to myself like, yep, we had lightning in a bottle right there. When I realized that this universe was specifically special, I think was Warcraft 3. I had been playing the single-player campaign. We had just finished the game, and I had time on my hands, and it's a great way to cool down and just experience the game firsthand instead of thinking about it from a making it standpoint. And it was Warcraft 3, and Arthas had just, I think he had just denounced Uther, and he told him that this was an act of treason. And it was the moment that Arthas actually went in a different direction. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, we're actually telling stories for real. And I'm really caught up in this world. And I just remember getting chills even sitting there and watching this little in-game cinematic and thinking to myself, like, my God, what an incredible moment we've created right here. And yeah, it's absolutely stuck with me.
The first moment that I realized the Warcraft world was something special, it's probably when we had the signing at Fry's, the evening that it was released. And my friend James McCoy, who's our animation supervisor, and I were driving towards this event. And, you know, it was one of those things where, like, you'd see a couple people, but you didn't realize what was going on. And you'd see more and more people, and they were all walking in this direction. And we were driving along, and we finally recognized that this was happening, and we were all sitting there like, I wonder if there's like a rock concert going on back here or something like that. We kept going and didn't really think about it until we got to Fry's and realized there was no parking and so on and so forth. And at that moment, we realized that all these people were walking in the same direction that we were going for the Fry's signing. And that was pretty special. I think prior to that, we had a few hundred people at our signings, and at that one, it was thousands. I don't remember exactly how many, but that moment was pretty cool. A personal moment that really stands out to me playing a Warcraft game would have to be back when I was in college in 1998. I worked at a gallery, and it was really small, and no one ever came in there. So the manager and I would switch shifts, and we would both play Warcraft 2. And for us, it was like, you know, the real gem of the game was getting to the end of a level that had a cinematic. So he was always there more than I was, so he would be ahead of me in the game. And he'd always come back and say, did you get to the next cinematic? And, you know, most of the time it was no, but every once in a while it would be yes. And then we'd have an hour-long discussion on how cool the cinematic was and how it's made and so on and so forth. At the time I was studying 3D at school, and he was studying painting. So for him it was all foreign. So it created these really great conversations, and it also made me realize that maybe going into gaming was the way to go. So.
So the moment I realized that the Warcraft universe was something special, I'd have to say it was probably one of the first times when you start World of Warcraft and you play as either Alliance or Horde, as a human or orc. And when you first jump into the game and you get that introductory experience flying through Elwyn Forest over Stormwind Castle, you've got the beautiful scenery, the landscape, the art to look at. You've got the just awesome voiceover giving you the backstory of what your character is all about, what your faction's all about. And it's that really immersive introductory experience for me that really just set the stage for what this game is all about and what you're about to get into. It really just sets the right tone, the right feel, and as soon as it plops you down right in your starting area, you know you're in for something special. So one of the my most memorable favorite moments of playing the Warcraft games, again, has to probably key in on some of the art and the story. When playing Warcraft 3, and there's the cinematic when Arthas is coming home, there's one shot in particular, and I think everyone would recognize and remember what it is. It's the one where he just knocks open the gates with his two sort of sentries walking behind him. And it's just that shot, the way the gates fly open, like they're empty and hollow, and he just proceeds right into the camera, and he's silhouetted against the overbright sky in the background. It's just such a memorable, imposing moment of the cinematics that I just remember watching that and just getting chills in my spine and going, that is an epic scene.
The dwarf starting zone in World of Warcraft, the first time I saw Ironforge was really special. It's like this mountain kind of rising above the snowfield, and there's all these extra like little buildings and towers sticking out of there, so you get the impression the thing is just gigantic. And you go up this ramp up to the front gate, everything is like, even though they're little dwarves, everything is huge and out of scale, and there's a great sense that the place just goes on and on. You don't see a lot of it in there, but you know that this whole mountain is just honeycombed with tunnels and stuff. Very epic. My favorite gamer moment. I'm gonna go to World of Warcraft. First time I fought Onyxia the dragon was really epic. I mean, it's this gigantic dragon, and I always thought Blizzard really did dragons right. I mean, they felt like a big opponent. It was something scary, not just something that you carve through by the thousands. We killed Onyxia. I was a protection warrior at the time. I had my book all ready to get, the Quell Sarar, and plunging it into her body and all that. It was just like, I think that was the first time I realized you can still feel like a hero even in an MMO with lots of other people around.
The first moment that I realized Warcraft was something special was probably the first BlizzCon I was able to go to, and that was working here at Blizzard and going. It was just such a different experience seeing that many people that care about the game, and I think it was the fact of seeing not only people that were my age and like my friends, but seeing families that showed up to BlizzCon and they brought their kids and they were coming up to the stage and wanted to talk to us, and just seeing the impact that the game has on such a wide variety of people. Because I think working on it here, we just think that other gamers play this game, but as it's grown and gotten bigger, I think that our influence continues to get larger. And I didn't really see that until I got to go to BlizzCon and just seeing how many people were there and how much they care about the game, not just as a game, but as kind of like it's something that they do with family and with other people. And it was something a lot bigger than I had expected. I definitely played all the Warcrafts or before World of Warcraft, but I think definitely the biggest moment for me was definitely the first time that we killed Ragnaros in World of Warcraft. I was in a guild I was working here at Blizzard, so actually I killed him at my desk after work one night because we were raiding here. And I think that moment we screamed because we were on voice chat and everyone yelled at the same time when we beat him for that first time. And it just felt like that thing of getting that accomplishment with 40 other people. Had never really done that in another game before, where you work with so many people together to get something done. And that was vanilla WoW, so it was kind of like that first real big boss in the game that people could actually take down.
Well, yeah, I think all the Warcraft games have something special to it, but the first time I think I realized it fully was during Warcraft 2 development. Warcraft 1 was a great game. It was a lot of fun, did really well, but I don't know, something about Warcraft 2, it just felt like it was coming together. The idea was solidifying. The game was that much more fun and interesting. And when you put all the pieces together, there was just some sort of magic that made it more than the sum of its parts.